Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. Tonight's episode, Xtreme TV, we're covering Kolchak, Season 1, Episode 16, The Demon and Lace, an aptly titled episode of one that I think, gentlemen, is very strong. I'm your host, Rob. Along with me tonight are Professor Pixel and RDV. Gentlemen, we've talked a lot about how Kolchak's episodes been hit or miss, especially disappointing how some of them are because the character's so strong, how we love the performance of it. And despite the fact that it shows it's about 50 years old, that we like sometimes the cheap effects and some of the sound. And I got to say, this is one of the best episodes I've seen in all 16 episodes. Let's start with you, RDV. What's your initial impression?
This is, yeah, as I said last week, this was very well done. We even get that, I said, and then we're talking about the police captains. This has the best police captain actor in here. This has Captain Joe Mad Dog Siska, played by Keenan Wynn. That guy, every time I hear him, though, and I swear, I hear Ralph from the Muppets, the dog, because he's just he's just always angry, and I was like, it's just like I just love it, and that always brings a smile on my face because this guy is like, this is the guy who'd be like, yeah, Kolchak, you're gonna give me a heart attack. He's popping pills, just trying. He's so stressed out. He's a comic relief, which really helps out, but the production value for this is really well done too. I mean, the only thing I frowned upon was the giant demon tablet, or whatever it's called.
Oh, we'll get to that here, as the episode gets to it.
But like I said, I liked it, and it's out of Chicago too. It's the setting. It's not even in Chicago.
I agree. That's a strong point.
So you got that going for it.
Pixel, what about you?
Also, Frosty the Snowman. He has like only 2 lines in this movie, but Jackie Vernon, that's Frosty the Snowman right there.
I did not know that.
Coach Toomey.
Yeah. Hey,
So when you say Frosty the Snowman, you're talking about the 60s, 70s claymation animated Frosty that some may not know if they're younger and listening to this.
the original, the OG Frosty, yes.
Gee, Frosty. I will say this, because I agree with both y'all as far as your points on this episode. The thing that really hooked me in early on was, of course, Demon Lace refers to a succubus, taking men's juice and killing him and all this kind of stuff. You can talk about how it's executed, but you start off with this really hunky, good-looking blonde dude meeting a really good-looking blonde chick, and Kolchak always seemed to have really good-looking people in his shows, which I think is a plus, especially the ladies. But of course, things don't go exactly as planned. He's called on the scene. Kolchak even hooks up, basically, not literally, but he's paired up with a campus reporter. And to your point, RDV, them being not in Chicago with the same scenes was a plus. But when he's driving to the first scene of the death there, when the beginning credits are rolling, this episode, the score for some reason jumped out on me, and I thought it was fantastic. I don't know if this is a piece of classical church music or something or what, but it's very creepy and eerie. And sometimes Kolchak's at its best when it's just what I like to refer to as the old Hammer vibe, the Hammer horror films with Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing primarily, and several others, whether it's the vampires or werewolves. The atmosphere. Fantastic in here too. As far as it being a typical Kolchak episode, I think you're right on too. But as we get into this and we see the bodies start piling up and some of the effects there, RDV, you mentioned before about how you thought it was a strong episode. What else came to mind?
Well, the production value, as far as the horror and stuff like this, it's like you're taking it for people who've never heard what a succubus is. Yes, it's basically they prey on the souls. They suck the soul life out of like men and women. The incubus is for the women, and then the succubus is what goes after the guys, the female version. And
gender equality.
Yes, gender equality when it comes to demons. But I like this. So the succubus wasn't just one person, though. It took on the form of anybody who it would possess people's bodies, people who had died. And then like you see like there, there's some good looking babes here too. And then you find out that she's a succubus, and it's like, and it's just funny because you see this going on, and like, and you're thinking about like, well, this could be real. You don't know that. This is something, one of those things that it's kind of scary. Because people are like, oh, there's ghosts. I'm like, well, why wouldn't there be demons? Why wouldn't it be this? There's lore and like tales, and all the urban legends about all this stuff throughout history and tablets and stuff. Like I said, the only thing I didn't like was the professor in his pimp robe.
Yeah, there's always that most interesting man in the world kind of vibe when you talk about 70s fashion and mahogany desks and leather-bound volumes, which there's a fair amount of here in Kolchak, which It's
But-
great as a backdrop when the guy's there and he's got the pipe. You're kind of like, yeah, I just want to punch you a little bit.
But like I said, like I love the special effects in here too. You know, that's it was just so great. It was this it's going back to this movie. You know, this episode reminds me of the other episode we got in the very beginning with the zombie.
How so?
Well, the special effects and all that stuff, you know, and you see people wearing the contacts or they're in all the makeups. They want to make it really scary. This is like something you'd see in a movie. That's what it felt like.
It looks dated because, like I say, the show's 50 years old,
Well, yeah.
but it's effective, and there's nothing
Like,
wrong with that.
yeah.
It looks very good.
You know, and it has the lore to it. It's like ancient Mesopotamia, you know, and she's basically murdering young men to remain her immortality.
Yep.
And you know, and like I said, this is be something you would see in a movie, but but there'd be nudity. That's something that was missing from it. Like it'd be kind of more gore, you know. But like, like I said, you got the it works out too. It stays the formula for the horror elements. You got the cop, and you got the guy who's innocent, but he's trying to save the girl, and save. The only thing that was different is that Kolchak's not trying to save his girlfriend. It'd be different if you had a younger guy trying to save his girlfriend. Like Shakma. Shakma was against.
Yeah, Kolchak's got no time for that.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, I'm just saying. I could see this being in the 70s, being one of those horror movies, because we've had other movies are coming out around this time, and even after this, that was the big thing was Poltergeist and all that stuff. So I love it when they do the horror aspects of the show. The science fiction, the horror.
Yeah, and to your point, they have beautiful women, but it's not a sexy show. And
No.
When the good-looking guy's making out with the chick, and of course, it's not a believable scenario as far as what happens. Maybe not, but the point is when you see him with his head down on her because he's on top of her on the ground, and then her hands they're wrapped around his neck, turn into dust. That was pretty cool and disgusting the way her face looked.
Well, yeah, you had a girl, Maria, who she came home, she laid on the couch, she died. She worked herself to death, and then she gets back up, and the mom's like, doing the cross sign and everything. It's like, oh, it's a demon.
Yeah. Now, Pixel, you'd mentioned before too about the show, some things about it that you've liked and not liked, and you've been kind of with us where there's been some episodes you've been kind of not too fond of, but you really like this episode a lot.
This episode is not just a good episode of Kolchak. It is thus far the best episode of Kolchak. Putting aside my affection for Laura
Kolchak.
Parker, who was in 2 episodes before. This was the best episode thus far, and I know we only have a few left, but just with how good it is, I would have been sold based off of this episode alone as the first, rather than going through, okay, here we go. Okay, I'm waiting, and it's been a while, and honestly, I realize I haven't enjoyed it, but I'm shocked about how much fun I had watching this episode. And it isn't the fun kind of way where, oh my gosh, look at this, it's so bad, it's funny. No, it's just good. This was good TV. This was extreme TV, and I just loved it.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point because if my memory serves me correctly, when we first started doing the show, I thought I had mentioned that my understanding was the episodes we're watching them may not 100% be the way that either they were intended to be distributed by the channel or whether they came out on DVD. There might have been one that was filmed but not shown or vice versa. Those things happen. And without really getting too much to it because it's not really worth it, I agree with you that it's very good TV. So if we had to select a couple of Kolchak episodes themselves to put in the vault and say this is what represents Kolchak, I agree with you, and I would say I would pick out this episode because, again, like RDV said, it's kind of fun, but the atmosphere is really good. You've enjoyed it and thinking it's fun, and it's amazing to me how we can have an episode that we just go, man, I get what they're trying to do, but it just didn't work, or I kind of liked it, but the execution, or it just fell flat. And then you have a really good episode. And I think you've only had one episode that I just kind of on. And there's been interesting things about some of them, but interesting itself is not necessarily entertaining. But this one has it all. It's a good episode. It appeals to both sexes in a way. It's got all the classic Kolchisms without them being too overboard. Even the fighting with Vincenzo, it's like, that's one of my least favorite things about the show. It's not distracting in here too, but I get maybe it's just the fact that it's not just in the same old buildings that it looks like, even though that's a strong bit about being in the city. Just the fact that it's not. It's on, was it the Illinois Institute of Technology or whatever it is, whatever campus they're supposed to be on. It's just different. And so media, like I said, between that and music and all that, it just really adds a lot to it. And it really surprised me how when you take Kolchak away from the city, and maybe we'll revisit this as we finish up here in a couple weeks, it seems like those episodes stands out like the one we like, the werewolf one where he's on the singles cruise. It's like, take Kolchak away from all that, the episodes have been pretty damn good. And so we'll have to see if there's any basic themes about that we discover there too. But overall I agree with both you guys. Fantastic episode. It's one of the few episodes I think we all really love too. But I'll go around one more time for any final thoughts on this episode, other than the tablet thing at the end. RDV, you kind of mentioned that to me. I don't know if you want to close with that, but what are your final thoughts?
Well, before I get to that, I'm going to tell you right now, Morticia Addams was in this show and in this episode. She played she was Carolyn. If you don't know who she is, she's Carolyn Jones. She was the lady working for the register.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's
nobody gets back there. Oh, your security.
Yeah. so that was kind of cool to see her, and sadly that she died. I think it was around 80 something. She was born in I can't remember, the early 30s, but she died anyway. But yeah, she died in 1983. Born in 1930. Good actress too. But yeah, for most of those people who don't know who didn't really were watching Addams Family back then, or at all, people today would go watch the episode. They would they wouldn't even recognize her. And without having the long black hair and all the goth kind of looking.
It's not a standard for the goth look in primetime TV.
Yeah. Well, Morticia Addams is what's inspired Elvira and all that stuff. Yeah. So that's awesome. So I'm just saying, I love the fact that this show still has guest stars in there, and like I said, unless you're a fan of Francis Snowman, who nobody looks like a voice actor, you're not gonna notice. But back then, everybody. I'm not saying back then people knew who these celebrities were because they did movies, they did TV shows. It's kind of like today. You watch an animated movie or something like that, and then you look up the name, and you're like, oh, I've seen this guy in other movies and so, or he's done some other stuff, or woman. It's a learning experience whenever I watch a show, because I get to see the guest stars. I look them up. I'm like, oh, they're on this and this. I'm like, oh, that's right. I remember seeing them before. Because a lot of times back then, you either knew their name or you didn't know their name. But you knew the face though, because you didn't have the internet. It was, that's how it was. Now I have the technology is dude, I can look them up. I'm like, that's who that was. That's what they're in. That's one of the fundamental things I love about the internet. It just gives you knowledge.
Listen, don't go insulting Frosty the Snowman. You can tell by that voice that's Frosty. It was one of the few times that I actually recognize somebody. So
quit getting Frosty on me. We're talking about demons and lace.
And as for my final thoughts, this is just fantastic. As Rob said, if there was one episode that I had to pick of Kolchak to show somebody to say this is Kolchak, this is it. This is what it's supposed to be. And I'm happy we're coming to the end of this, and I finally have something that I can look back fondly upon.
And Maria Venegas, the one who ends up becoming really, really old, because she's the last one that the body that the succubus basically possessed. Because at the end, the demon tablet comes in. Kolchak says, you know what? The only way to destroy this thing is to destroy the tablet. So he takes a sledgehammer to it. And then it just knocks it over and falls to pieces, and the succubus starts aging rapidly in the body. But I'm like, Man, it sucks. A waste of a good body is Maria Grimm. It's beautiful actress. Only did TV shows, didn't do any movies, but I was like, man.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 1, episode 16 of Kolchak the Night Stalker. Great episode. Hopefully the last couple that we get won't be turds, and they'll be really good too. We'll see what happens with that. But another experiment here on the Xtreme Movie Show. I'd like to thank Professor Pixel and RDB for joining me tonight and covering this groundbreaking show. Some of the episodes we cover, or shows in general, we go into great detail, like, say, the Twin Peaks that we do. Some of them we only talk about superficially because it's more about some of the historical things, and Kolchak's definitely one of those too. So we definitely are bringing a different vibe to it. If you got some questions, comments, concerns, like to let us know what's going on with it, please do so below. As always, I'd like to thank these guys for showing up, for you guys for listening. Have a good night, and as always, stay extreme.
Extreme!
Extreme!
Extreme!